Master Grade Aile Strike Gundam. Hey again everybody, Robert184 from Gundam.tk, and it's the Master Grade Aile Strike. You've seen the parts, let's turn it into the mobile suit. As the GAT X105 Strike spins around into view here, the first thing that I'm struck by, as always, is the colors. This could be a very white and plain Gundam, because really outside of the color in the chest and the red feet, you're not going to get much in the waist or on the head. But what you do have is this gray inner frame that sticks out in all sorts of places, even on the back of the elbows, especially down there on the legs where they look like thrusters, but at the end of the day, they really just break up the monotony of the color and the proportions. I don't know what you think, but I think this has done a very good job of looking sleek and stylish and powerful all at the same time. For the mobility before it's mobilized, you'll notice that this front waist skirt is a little bit loose, but you're able to bring the leg all the way forward. The side skirts can bend up that much, but if you twist them out of the way, you're not going to get the legs much more than that, because they all are on the old school ball joint that just sticks out. So don't expect too much out of the legs that way, but in terms of bending down here, you are able to get the 180. And if you bring that leg down, you'll see the bend in the thigh and the ankles, as you saw in the parts. The toes move, and they move very well side to side, though not quite perfect grade quality for sure. The upper body rotates this way, and there's not a bend mechanism. There's no double joint or anything there inside the waist. But with the arms, you're going to be able to rotate them all the way around, and you can bring them across this far. But if you actually use this bend mechanism here, you'll notice that the shoulder comes down. Then you can get that arm to reach all the way across, though it's not going to quite make it to its shoulder. But the most impressive part of this is that if you bend it up and you get that ugly sounding sound, yes, you can put the hands up, and the Strike Gundam can be asking to please be excused. I hope you weren't planning to steal the Strike Gundam in the first episode of Seed, because here it is. I just decided to keep it simple before putting on the striker packs. The armored Schneiders here work really well, despite the fact that they're colored poorly. And the big winner is just because the shoulders have so much flexibility. The fact that you can rotate them up, and the fact that they can move in the shoulders forward and back and up and down. Whether you have the knives in the hands properly or not, I'm sure that with a little bit of time you can pull off all sorts of angry looking, wouldn't want to meet this guy in a back alley kind of poses. To put the striker pack in, it's just a straightforward slide in, and you'll want to keep everything balanced so that it doesn't pop up too much on the shoulders. Suddenly you go from having a very plain and sleek and powerful looking Gundam to being one that looks like it's a lot more filled out, a lot wider, and these parts here, even though they are small, when you're looking at it from the front, it just looks a lot more filled out, no matter which angle you look at it from. Having the V and having those not perpendicular to the ground really helps, and that thing sticking out in the back, the white part, works. There are a few problems which I'll talk about as it spins around, namely the fact that just this backpack tends to lean back, and the waist can go back, so you could have weight issues because the Strike Gundam may always be leaning back, and if these aren't touching here on the shoulders, it can actually look pretty disappointing. For height comparison, you can see here that the Strike Gundam is pretty much just a little bit shorter if you just look at the top of the head compared to the RX-78-2 Granddaddy Gundam there on the right. But this is where you start to see the similarities between the blue chest, the red abs, then the white down below with the red feet. But when you look at these two, this looks pretty simple. There's this yellow color all over the place, but this one is made up by the fact that it actually looks busy. It doesn't look simple just because of that gray inner frame that's poking out from all over the place. Here's the Strike next to its immediate predecessor, the Turn A Gundam, which actually looks deceptively simple from a distance, but if you go up close, there's lining all over this body. This one certainly has the edge and height, even though it actually has a broken head part. And the Strike Gundam over here to the left is going to have, it's looking sleek except for the Aile Strike, which really fills it out. Without that, it would come across as being a lot smaller. Here's the Force Impulse Gundam on the right from Seed Destiny, the successor to the Strike Gundam as the first lead of the series. And over here, you're just going to notice that, of course, we have some similarities here with the idea of the red flight backpack on the two of them. But in terms of color, there's no doubt that the Force Impulse just has a lot more all over the place. The Strike, again, simple and clean. So this one is a question as to you, individual taste, which one you prefer. When arming the Strike, you're going to have a fair number of options with this shield as to how you want to attach it. This being one of the ways, with this part down below and then this part being fed into the hand. And while it fits on there pretty solidly, it's not necessarily the way that I'd like to do it just for display purposes. When you rotate this part around and connect it here to the back and slide it forward, you end up having something that is going to move a little bit more easily across the body for defense purposes, and it almost looks like you could attack with it. Don't expect as many options with the beam rifle though, because there are no pegs. It's just going to fit in here with the 3-finger trigger finger split. Looks like it's staying up pretty well so far, however, you may need sticky tack to keep it up in position for a longer time. You've already seen the knives in hand, but here as it comes around with the shield and beam rifle without sticky tack, you can see that the legs do just give it that little bit of posability, that even though the head isn't very mobile, you can have some decent looking ground shots. Too bad that the feet don't want to go as flat-footed as you'd like, but I'm still somewhat impressed that even without getting it off the ground, that it can come across looking like this. Swap out the beam rifle for a beam saber, and you can just have a variation on a theme. Again, that shield comes across fairly well, and the beam saber, even though it's thin, the pink clear parts do stand out fairly well against the white and red. If you decide to put them ready to launch in the bay or for maintenance or something like that, you'll notice that the feet fit really well, and you can lock them in, well, not lock them in, but just close that up. Whether you have the shield in hand or not, as he stands there, I am really impressed with this power cord. The only problem being is that because it's fairly thick, what'll happen is it'll push the Strike Gundam forward and it can actually topple it out of those feet mounts there. But the way it actually connects in the back is fairly impressive and something that makes this a real bonus for the master grade. With just a little bit of bends to the knees, you can create a fairly dynamic about to launch pose here, as that cable stops being a problem because it's just stretched out that much more as it gets ready to go spaceborne. And as it pulls forward and rips off from the energy cord, you get the idea. Until I get around to doing my next order, this part is going to interfere with being able to do any aerial poses here. So a clear action base, which wasn't made to work specifically with the Strike Gundam, but just put in one of the generic mount points. And yes, you can have him launching as if he was just heading out of the ship. In the air, even though the Aile Strike is really simple in its design, beam rifle, shield, and the fact that it's got this flying looking backpack, I think that the poses that you can do are really impressive. Whether it's a beam saber or a beam rifle, it's just the fact that he's got all the right colors in all the right places, and good posability that makes this work for me. And when you're watching the first opening of Gundam Seed, the Strike Gundam coming out so dynamically from the ship, freezing as the titles just begin, the fact that you can recreate that with a master grade that came out shortly after the anime just went off the air, I think this is already going to give you a pretty good indication of whether this can capture the power of the anime. That'll wrap up my look at the mobile suit mode, but stay tuned for the next part where I'm going to give you all the good and bad parts in the verdict so you can decide whether this old 2003 Master Grade Aile Strike is something that you may want to be picking up. Anyway, everybody, Robert184, Gundam.tk, thanks as always for hitting like if you do, comment, and subscribe. Always love to hear from you, and thanks as always. See you next time. So how'd that second half of Seed Destiny end up working out for you? Well, probably better than the last couple episodes of Seed ended up working out for you.